Go. Okay.
Well, I'm pleased that we have this opportunity to connect again and to do our next series of conversations. And like you were saying in our earlier conversation, that it is and it isn't really an interview. It's more of a conversation, and covering certain topics and looking at a broader perspective of how things are and what we have as a navigational capacity to be able
Mhm.
to move through this opportunity. So again, my name is Franco, and yourself, Duty, and I'm really pleased that we get to play. And I love the questions and the discussions that we have. It's not always as deep with other conversations I have. Sometimes
Thank
they
you.
are, but
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm flattered. And there is a reason that I, um, I chose you as my first interviewer because I watch your videos and your teachings, and I really connect to it. And my nature is the kind of a scientist, a researcher. So I have lots of questions, and I try to take it to the, let's say, more practical nature, which technology, rather than just pure science and basic science, which is
Mhm.
on the anecdotal side of thing. And I want to take the practical lessons from spiritual teachings and incorporate into my life and those around me. So I am very grateful for the previous interview discussion, which was, I think, the best, the most practical for us. We discussed about the entities,
Mm.
and we discussed about life cycle of the soul, and we discussed about the say free will boundaries of the soul.
Mhm.
In this interview discussion, I would like to discuss more about differentiating and being more practical about uh, entities and souls, um, how we, let's say, relate and create entities, manifest entities, and how we control them, if we can. And also, let's say, identifying creatures which have souls or we don't have souls. Um, okay, so let's begin with this question of who possess souls, how we identify those who possess souls and differentiate from those who don't. Okay.
Okay. Well, I mean, you were saying in a previous conversation that we had that animals tend to have a soul, or at least you felt that your particular pet has a soul. Now, the one thing with animals, let's start with animals, and then we can go
Mhm.
into plant life and so forth. When it comes to say an animal, it doesn't have an individualized soul. It operates within the collective soul of that particular species. So it can create a little channel of specification for that particular animal. So, for example, say you have a little dog, and the
Mhm.
dog basically at this point in time uh, is not having a soul like a human would have, completely with past lives and with
Mhm.
reoccurring experiences of learning and so forth. It's like humanity is evolving at
Yes.
a soul level and an entity level. An animal is also has an entity and is evolving in that regards. But when it comes to the animal evolution, it is more of a collective. So that means all the dogs, or certain, because some of them are broken down categories, share one soul in a sense, and
Mhm.
they communicating. So in essence, the species of the animals is also evolving as a soul unit, but not
Mhm.
individualized, one by one. Now, in a connection with a human, for example, at times, what occurs, I shouldn't say at times, most of the time, what occurs, if there's a relationship, a connection made, say, with your dog. So you have a dog, you make a strong connection. What happens is it links to your soul and is communicating more directly with your soul.
Oh,
So,
so it's private connection.
yes. And so
Mhm.
its experience becomes part of your experience. So if
Okay.
the animal, the dog, for example, is now playing around and experiencing in your family dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
its viewpoint, its perspective, the how it observes and interacts with you and with other with other people in the family, there's a direct connection. So you may have, say, two children, just as an example. One child not interested in the dog and pays that there's not that same level of connection. It just exists. It may play a specific role, but it doesn't. So you have say for yourself, you have a very strong connection. Maybe your other child has a strong connection too. So it
Mm-hmm.
will create more of an intimate, more direct connection. So that becomes the dog's experience, the dog's observation becomes part of your experience in your soul. So it's actually registered in your soul. So it actually piggybacks onto your soul.
Okay.
At the same time, it still has a connection to the collective soul of the animal. So the dog's collective soul. Now, there are instances where if a dog comes into your life and your soul is communicating to the what you can call the oversoul,
Mm-hmm.
the main soul of the animals, of the dog, for example,
Mm-hmm.
then a specific channel of experience can be transmitted to the dog for your own experience for yourself. And at
Amazing.
times that can be pets are pretty powerful when it comes to that when it takes on the assignment to facilitate. So
Mm-hmm.
for example, you need an experience where you are so uptight, so intense, so whatever it is, and you're playing in a certain pattern. Your soul is trying to help you shift it, but your characteristics and your entity is very rigid,
Mm-hmm.
um, or ego mind also very rigid to move. Then the dog comes in and communicates with your soul and says, okay, great, I'm going to download this particular level of consciousness and experience to be shared with you, with the human, with
Mm-hmm.
the owner, whatever you want to call it, so
Mm-hmm.
that it actually helps you to evolve and to also even break a pattern. Because I was interesting some years ago, this goes back maybe over a decade ago, somebody said, well, look, I've noticed that a lot of the pets, say for dogs, cats, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
tend to take a certain level of similarity to the human owner or the
Mm-hmm.
the partner. It's like the look, the mannerisms, and so forth, because
Mm-hmm.
they end up being somewhat of a mirror
Yeah.
for you. They also end up playing a particular role for you. And so I looked at that and I go, okay, that's exactly what's happening. And then, of course, I have communicated with animals too
Mm-hmm.
at the soul level, and they were sent a confirmation or communicated confirmation, but that's how it was doing. So it's not very, limited. Now, if you're talking about animals that are just roaming free, that have really not a strong connection to humans, because there's not a relationship established, then they're
Mm-hmm.
just operating within their soul. So if you get a lion or you get an elephant, they each have different cluster soul that they use. They're all
Mm-hmm.
communicating with that particular experience. So the one particular animal, as it learns and as it becomes more evolved in from a soul perspective, if communicated with that hub. It's like your server. Like if you load everything up on your server,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
say from somebody's separate PC, that data, that whatever you've uploaded now is everybody that's on the network has access to it, right? So that's how it works with the animal kingdom. This applies to the plant life, to the
Mm-hmm.
insect world. Now the insect world has a little less. It's much lower.
Mm-hmm.
Birds the same way. I mean, there's different, reptilian type animals and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
They all work in that way. When you really look at it, it's still part of the collective entity in a way. It has a connection to that. It's not operating directly that way, and it's also from the collective oversoul. So basically, these souls on the planet are still intercommunicating with the animal kingdom and so forth. So it's amazing how it works. So it takes a while to explain it in all the levels that it functions, but it's amazing how that exists. Hopefully, I've answered what you were inquiring about that.
Well, some of it. So, is there also a benefit to the pets beside of the humans? Do they get also?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because we are all one. Okay,
Okay.
and the advancement of humanity, advancement of the animal is all beneficial. So the animal wants to assist, for example, for humanity's or what we call the collective evolution. With the collective experience and evolution of the human is also being reflected in the animal. Let's put it this way. If you look at animals, even the food chain or the aggressor modalities that some wilder
Mm-hmm.
animals will take and so forth, is very powerfully a reflection to the human experience on
Whoa.
their operating system. Because
Okay.
if humanity starts to calm down and not operating in that frequency, you'll notice that the whole thing changes with even the interaction with the animals, insects, you name it, the oceanic animals and so forth, species. So all of it actually changes. So you see that everything is reflecting back and forth. For example, like if you take
Yes.
a dog may be trained and programmed to be very aggressive as a protector or guard dog.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It will play that. However, if that dog meets up with somebody that's vibrating a very peaceful nature, as
Mm-hmm.
much as the dog is programmed as as a guard dog and would be in an attack mode, it
Mm-hmm.
will not attack and would actually be very calm with that interaction with that person, even
So it's
though
a
their
reflection.
job is to be
Yeah.
an aggressor.
So it's a reflection.
Correct. And but it's also not only a reflection, it's also there's a communication of what services are required. For example, if somebody's
Mm-hmm.
going in that's very fearful of dogs or fearful of any aggression,
Mm-hmm.
then they're kind of opening up that channel of frequency. So the dog kind of gets the message. It says, "Oh, I would be best serving you to be an aggressor at this moment." But somebody
Okay.
coming in that doesn't require that, the dog kind of gets the message, not necessary here. You're not of service here in that way. So
Mm-hmm.
you can be, and I've seen this what happen, and I'm sure you have observed this yourself. If you have ever seen that some dogs can be very aggressive with certain people and then
Mm-hmm.
not aggressive with others. So
Right.
somebody's walking down the street and they see a dog and they're just petting them, and then normally they're pretty aggressive, and then they walking away and somebody else comes by and they're barking at them and reacting very
Mm-hmm.
negative.
Yeah.
It's because yes, part of it's the mirroring, but part of it is how it serves in regards of what one's reflecting versus the other, and so the other one goes, oh, okay, that's now. So that is totally is strongly connected, and of course the animal kingdom wants to also upgrade too along with the human, but the human is kind of the leader in a way. Now, saying that, there's another thing that's going on, and that is some of the animals have chosen to actually start to reflect the smaller group of souls that are on the planet that are more and more connective and are feeling more oneness. I don't know if you've paid attention, have noticed, but you'll notice that you can get two types of animals that actually are considered in the operating system as enemies. Like you say, um, a particular animal that would eat another type of animal or would attack it in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
You're starting to notice that there's a different relationship being established where they're not playing the role of, you know, aggressor, and they're actually being very calm with that interaction with that person. Even though their job is to be an aggressor. So attack and one becomes the food chain or something of that nature. So you're seeing,
Yeah.
what would be not conducive as a cat and a dog, or other animals that would be considered a
Hmm.
predator and so forth. You'll notice
Hmm.
that there's more relationships of that being established in a very loving and so forth, where you wouldn't expect it before.
Especially one for the young ones. Let's say I saw a, um, a dog chasing cats, but he is very loving to the kittens that were grown next to him,
Mhm.
and there is kind of his favorite cats. On the other one hand,
Yeah.
and the other hand, I saw a cat that's very protective of chicken chicks
Hmm.
that was brought next to him, and it was kind of they almost hatched next to the cat,
Yes.
and the cat take over and protect the chicks, small chicks.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. The mothering instinct comes in, but
Yes.
also the other part of it where it's just the next, oh, we got to protect the young. But you'll also notice it with grown up animals too at times.
Hmm.
Also being the case where they're not going to, be the typical aggressor being aggressive, whatever you want to call it, versus the one being more passive. You'll find it it's very calming, and I've seen this before because on many cases, and I think people
Hmm.
have even posted that on videos where they see, you know, two animals that would rather not, be friends becoming really
Hmm.
close and friendship and
Hmm.
also wanting not to part. I have a friend, a lady that I know that I have worked with. She uses horses to
Hmm.
create therapy for other humans, and the relationship that they have, the wisdom and the communication they have is amazing, of
Hmm.
how that is there, and that's just one example. And
Yes.
for example, I know another lady that I've worked with, and she is a therapist, and she has clients that goes in and she does Reiki and a few other therapies. Her dog comes in the room where she's doing the therapy all the time, and they're communicating and helping each other while they're working on a client. It's amazing because she was telling me this a little while ago. She goes, "Well, when my dog's in there, I actually much more intuitive, things that I don't see, the dog will relate to her what she sees so that she can be more effective in working with the client." So it's just amazing how all of that is
Yes.
evolving.
Cats also.
Yes, yes. And what's interesting about cats and dogs too, they see a lot of things that humans don't see. You
Hmm.
know,
Yes.
and I've probably have noticed because if say an entity comes in the room or something,
Hmm.
of a lower energy, they usually either they go on guard or they may bark or snarl at them or they run away, and they go hide or something of
Hmm.
that nature. So
Also, yes. Also babies.
yes, yes,
Babies as well.
exactly. Exactly. My
Hmm.
say my granddaughter sees things quite amazingly. Um, and I remember a year or so ago, she was only not even a year old yet, and we went into this house, which where my father used to live, and I know that there's always entities in there. I'm always clearing it out. That my father had passed away, and we needed to clean out the house and dispose of it. So my daughter came over to visit quickly to kind of give us a hand and kind of check things over, and she brought my granddaughter along,
Hmm.
and my granddaughter was in her arms, and as soon as she came into the room, like her eyes opened up and she was looking around and she started to scream like crazy, and no way you could pacify her. There was no way. We had to take her outside
Hmm.
because, and then I looked around and go, oh, she can see this, she can see that, so I cleared it all up. But at the same time, it's amazing what kids can see, like you said, like the animals and things
Babies.
regular humans have
Yeah.
actually filtered out and said, well, I don't want to see that, and kind of
Hmm.
tune that. And this is more common too with kids now.
Yes. I noticed that when I interact with babies, and babies that don't walk yet,
Mhm.
and I carry them. They don't look at my face; they look at my aura because they are
Right.
fascinated with my aura. I don't know with other people, but I noticed that they are amazed by my. I don't know it's my personal aura, but it's fascinates them.
Yes,
So
yes.
look all around me, not at me.
Yes.
Amazing.
You know, the thing is too, if you pay attention to the aura when you're holding a child that's carrying a certain frequency and so forth, your aura shifts and it moves.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because I've observed it. So you're seeing, say you had purple coming off the top, and then all of a sudden it goes like this. It expands and moves around, and other colors move around.
Mhm.
So that actually becomes quite a kaleidoscope of entertainment for the child looking at it. And it's like, oh, this is interesting how I could see it move. And then the child starts, and so many children, when they're young too, get to realize by certain emotions that they feel or whatever, it changes your aura too because
Mhm.
it's interconnected. So to them, it's
Yeah.
almost like, oh, I can control that.
I,
You become a toy because you can control the way the colors move and so forth. So it's yes, that's what there's a lot of them are seeing.
okay. So we explored the animal kingdom. Let's go further to the plant kingdom.
Hmm.
Do plants have souls and let's say created entities?
Yes. Again, it's not individualized. It's more of a collective
Per
soul,
species?
but based on species. Yes.
Yes.
Now, some species have they share the same one because they're very close in the family energy frequency of this of the species of plants. So you're not going to have every individual plant having a different one, uh, and it has its own entity too. Again, it's a collective entity. So I don't know if you ever paid attention, but did you ever communicate with plants? Like have a talk with them? Even just maybe you may not
No,
hear them or may not get an input from them as clearly. But if you talk to the plant, you'll see that the plant actually responds.
I did not talk to uh, uh, to plants, but I hug trees,
Okay,
and I bless my food,
beautiful,
mostly
beautiful.
vegetables,
Yes,
vegetarian. Okay,
yes.
I'm mostly vegetarian, so I bless the food, and I um, try to let's say to increase its energetic value.
Hmm.
Okay, what?
Yeah, so plant life, the other thing about plant life is that each of the plants carry a certain frequency that is supportive on a collective scale.
Hmm.
Um, it is not affected so much by the human's frequency. In when I say that, more it reflects it to a certain degree. It's only a small percentage. Like I think it's
Hmm.
like 20%. It might be a little more. I might be off by my memory here,
Hmm.
but about it reflects about 20% of the collective energy of the planet. But a lot of the majority of the energy that the frequency that the plant transmits is the
Hmm.
collective plant life, but also from the species that it's from, because a lot of the species of the plants that are on the planet are coming from another planet, and they were
Okay.
brought in and then hybridized a little bit to be able to support
Hmm.
human. When you walk through the forest, for example, or wherever there's lots of plant life, most people feel very comfortable there.
Hmm.
And
Me too.
yes, the reason that is because they hold a certain energy and they're transmitting that energy. They're also communicating with plant. Now, for example, if you go and meditate in nature, the connection is not it's much stronger, but it's also communicating with you. So the plant will share its observation, the planet's observation, the air's observation, the water, whatever it's connected to, because it is connected to all of that. And it reflects more of that higher aspect of yourself in a way when you're doing that. I found
Mhm.
I do the same thing. I do hug trees. At times I love to meditate with my back against the tree because in
Mhm.
essence I can feel its very grounding energy too. Now, I always ask permission for a tree before I hug it. The reason is because a lot of my frequency is quite different, is somewhat alien in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But so I just ask. I say, okay, can I connect with you? And there's times the trees would say, "I'm not. No, I'm holding a certain energy that you would, throw off at this point." Other times it says, "Yes, great." So
Mm-hmm.
I hug the energy, I hug the tree, and I can feel, and there's a communication back and forth. And of course, I share my appreciation for its presence and the energy it holds on the planet, it holds for all of us, and so forth. And it also relates. There's many times I've been told by plant life that there's certain things happening that needs to be addressed, and so I can do that sometimes energetically. Other times I just bring it up into the collective so that somebody else or a group of people will go in and make some changes
Mm-hmm.
accordingly. For example, I was near a stream at one point, and I was giving the tree a hug, and the tree kept saying, there's very strong pollution coming through the lake, right? That particular
Mm-hmm.
stream, for example. And so I said, okay, can you direct me where it's coming from? It couldn't tell me exactly, but it was coming from upstream. So I walked upstream. And while I was walking upstream, I noticed that somebody had dumped a container, like it was a huge container
Mm-hmm.
with many liters of chemicals, and it had been dumped there for a long time. And what happened is started to leak,
Oh.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, a good portion of it had leaked out, probably more than half. But it wasn't leaking originally, but somehow with the environment being exposed to it, it started to leak, and I noticed it. So what I did is I lifted the container so it wasn't spilling, dripping this down the stream.
Mm-hmm.
And I did contact the municipality at that point, saying that there was this container, it was leaking. I noticed
Mm-hmm.
it, and I flipped it up. Can you send somebody to go and remove it? So they did. I imagine they did, because sometime later I went by, it wasn't there. But so that was communicated by the tree. I was not aware of it, and I wasn't actually intending to walk up the stream either. But I was going through a path, but the stream,
Mm-hmm.
I actually got off the path and went along the stream to see what the tree had told me. And because the tree's roots were deep enough, the water from the stream was actually seeping into the soil, and the tree was picking that up. So it's amazing, what level of communication. I'm just giving you an example. What
Mm-hmm.
happened a few years ago, and I found that, oh, okay, great. It gives you notification of things that are occurring. Now I know the plants have communicated. And I'm sure other people have communicated. I'm not isolated by that capacity, but have found that um, it feels the energy of what we're going through, but it also feels the energies of the stuff that's being dumped in the air, water, and so forth. And it does
Mm-hmm.
share for us to kind of a wisdom, pay attention, because this affects you too. You know, kind of that's the message I've kind of seen and received over the years. But others I've received similar message.
Mm-hmm.
For example, now if you're taking to rocks and soil and things like that, and I'm sure, I don't know if you've had the experience personally yourself, where you've been drawn to a rock, for example, and you picked it up and you can connect with it. It has a wisdom to it. It communicates with
No,
you.
I never.
No,
No.
but many people collect rocks because of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a connection, right?
Yes, my daughter did. No, one of them. She liked. She even these days she likes to pick rocks.
Yes, because they hold a certain energy, first of all. Second of all, it reflects an energy that they want to access themselves. So it actually
Mm-hmm.
provides somewhat of a grounding too. If you hold it, you can communicate, and it can share certain experiences for you. So all the various elements do talk to us. The wind talks to us. The rain talks to us. I mean, we have connection to all of it, and it's interesting. For example, the oceanic life too. For people, we find
Mm-hmm.
that there's a connection with the
Dolphins and whales.
dolphins, for example. Yes, whales. Other
Mm-hmm.
uh, life that's in the ocean and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
because it's all that. If you go in the water, I don't know if you've experienced it yourself. Like if you go in the ocean or if you go into the lake and you're swimming, it's like you entering a pool of energy. You can feel it all around you,
I
and it
feel
almost
yes,
embraces you. It feels like it's
yes.
hugging you.
I feel enhanced connection with Gaia when I'm in water, in bath or in the sea.
Yes, yes, and I found that too because actually, somebody had shared this to me. It wasn't my own realization. I went to see a person that we communicate on a spiritual level at times,
Mhm.
and I said, I feel so much better when I'm in the ocean because I love the seawater. There's something about it, and it helps me actually clean out some of the denser energies that I collect from walking
Mhm.
around and playing with the world, and even my own emotional stuff that comes up at times. And she says, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." She says, "You know what's the best thing?" She says, "Fill your bathtub with water and pour sea salt. Get the purest form that has not been,
Really?
iodinized or
Mhm.
processed. Get
Yes.
the ones that evaporated." And she says, when you're in the bath, go right in it and then talk to the element of the salt, talk to the element of the water to kind of cleanse you and so forth. So I've tried that and it works quite amazingly. And it's like, oh wow, it's pretty darn close to swimming in the ocean type of thing or being in
Hmm.
that water. So it's yeah, all of it is there to sustain and support us, and there's all of that in its existence, and it carries a consciousness. It carries a consciousness.
So let's distinguish with a consciousness and a soul. If I I um I hold to the idea that every creation, every cell and every uh, uh, no particle of sand, okay,
Hmm.
has some conscious.
Correct.
But what is the difference between a soul and a conscious? Because soul is not a conscious, right? So let's
No,
differentiate.
they kind of work together, but they're not. They're separate because the consciousness itself is the conscious. It's basically its operating system. It's awareness. It's the information that it gains through the experience. So that's what consciousness is. And our consciousness, of course, even when we talk about shifting from a third to a fourth to a fifth dimensional consciousness, it's just reaching further access to awareness and what happens is the higher consciousness that you go, you have further awareness from, because lower consciousness limits the awareness to existence. Like for example, somebody in a third dimensional consciousness that is totally ingrained in that, and that's hard, that's not hard to find, but that is not as prevalent as we think it is, because we all have different levels of consciousness,
Hmm.
would relate with a third dimensional consciousness as just being a physicality and its own existence and its own mind thought, and that's it. When you're going into fourth and fifth dimensional consciousness, there's a higher awareness of more of your essence. That is the consciousness. So you're bringing in consciousness is more information, more sensorial accessibility, and more awareness of what you can do. The soul itself is in a way it's the is source itself in its purest form, that is localized itself with a signature, but is a recorder of experiences of information from all levels. For example, your particular soul, our particular soul, human soul,
Hmm.
is recording every aspect of the experience from every level of sensorial, but also its awareness of. So it uses consciousness to create its reality and learn from its reality, expand its awareness, or what we call its enlightenment access, because through it. So the soul itself is that part of sourceness, which is the creation
Hmm.
of all existence, that is recording the individualized. And then, of course, it goes into different levels of soul connection, right back to source connection. So source
Hmm.
expands and learns and grows through that, because source is not stagnant, as we are not stagnant.
Hmm. So if we relate to source as a, let's say, a collector or recorder of experience with different level of conscious. So there could be a soul, let's say, to a stream. A river stream, okay, a water stream. There could be a conscious, let's say, to a rock, or let's say to a mountain, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
So there should be, beside of being a mountain, with a conscious of a mountain, and there is some kind of a recording of the experience of that mountain.
Correct.
And it was created, and it's, let's say, whatever is happening to the mountain, a few erosion, interaction with wildlife, and so forth.
Correct. Right? So the difference is that, like you said, all of it has a soul recorder, of course. The thing is, and that's why I was saying with the animals and other elementals, that it doesn't have a very specific individual. So if you're talking about the mountain in that area is being recorded to everything that's going on from that mountain, all the mountains in the area, which then is the next level, is all the mountains in a bigger span of area, and then of course all the mountains on the planet, for example. So those are all, but you're not going to have mountain A having one individualized recorder for that mountain A, because there's much less change that's occurring. The only reason that humans have individualized, because they are here to have individualized, because all of us are experiencing it much more fluid, for example, so that we are much more active in our experience, and the way our consciousness shifts, the way we operate greatly changes us each moment once we're on that fast track. So you can see that, where you're going to find that things like mountains and other elementals, even including animals, don't evolve as quickly, because they're not to do that. That's not specific to that.
What about, let's say, non-incarnated elements that we have in our experience? Let's say sometime ghosts and deities and demons and angels and so forth. How can we, let's say, distinguish those with souls and those without souls? Is it important at all?
Well, in a way, it's not important. However, let's put it this way. The reason a soul would become part of the experience if there's something being advanced by it. So, for example, an entity. You take an entity. What's an entity? An entity can come from a human entity. It can be from an animal entity. For example, say a cat dies, and it was close to your family. Some people will see the cat's entity around, even though it's not in physical form anymore, but they would be able to see it, or see its movement, or be able to maintain a certain communication, because there's a purpose behind the fact of that entity being around. So the cat's entity still exists.
Yes.
Same thing with the humans. Now, when we're talking about demons and all those other things, those entities can come from various places. They can be entities that have agreed upon or been assigned upon to be able to play a very dark role. So they will have been in a human form at some point, or they may be in an alien form.
I wish to interrupt you. I want to set the lightings, because the daylight is coming off.
Okay.
So I want to put on the light.
Sure. Okay. So thanks for adjusting the lighting. Yeah. So in essence, it's every time I stop, I always kind of lose my thought there.
Okay. We spoke about entities and their relationship to conscious, let's say, souls.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. So with the entities itself, like we were saying about the cat's entity may show up or whatever if the cat left. Now, the same thing applies to humans. Now, so the entities that are around either may have had a human experience before, or may be coming from an alien experience, and so forth, where that entity still sticks around. Now, what determines if it sticks around or not, if the entity feels that it didn't want to part, and still the collective entity is saying, yeah, okay, you can stay because we can all advance from this your presence being there. Now, so the entities will be around on different realms, and in this case, say, let's take planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So there'll be a go, and a lot of the entities people talk about, they call about entities. Other people will call it ghosts or will call it whatever because it's just a label that they've given, but
Mm-hmm.
it's one and the same thing. You're not going to really have a soul because a soul will communicate, and a lot of times it does not create a form unless it's going to utilize some form of entity. But so a lot of time, like people talk about, there's entities that you can communicate with because it's from somebody you recognize, or it's coming from an entity from a more advanced species of from an alien. Because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times people say, well, I channel or I connect. A lot of times what they're doing is connecting to entities from a different experience. So say I'm going to connect with an entity in from a Palladian incarnational pool of energy
Mm-hmm.
and also consciousness. So now you're going to have that level of communication and transmission. So a lot of times these entities also show up on the planet. They'll present. The same thing with the other entities. Well, we say, okay, well, we have a demon entity or a dark entity. That, again, that's a label, but
Mm-hmm.
they will play a very dark role because their frequency is tuned for that because of their experience, but also because the area that is they hang around is supportive of that energy. So if you have a group of people that are very fear-based and very low energy, so
Mm-hmm.
this happens also going to bars, certain bars and where they go and drink and whatever else, or because alcohol actually lowers your frequency.
Okay.
People don't like to admit that, but it does.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's a certain freedom at first because it lowers your inhibition of your own, filters because it numbs it a little bit. But what
Mm-hmm.
happens is your frequency lowers. So if you have a group, especially if you're going into a place where people tend to drink a lot and get very low frequency and then get into arguments or get into very low state, entities that are of a lower vibration kind of hover there. And at times they will attach to people. And some people can carry 2 or 3 or more
Okay.
entities that attach to them. The only reason they can attach is because they're already in that low frequency. But what happens, there's a challenge that occurs, is if once they're attached, they tend to kind of want to navigate to keep you in that low frequency. So say you were drinking and your frequency lowered, or you were
Mm-hmm.
having a very powerful emotional state and your frequency lowered. This particular entity attaches to you. Now it tries to navigate to some degree so that you stay in that low frequency so that it can actually feel
Mm-hmm.
at home. It keeps their vibration going. So that can participate. And this is where people are going in and clearing entities on people and whatever else because they've
Mm-hmm.
attached, and then it keeps them lower.
Can it go the other ways? Let's say you can get attachment to, let's say, entities with higher vibration that will keep you up.
Yes, if you're having a very elated experience where you're feeling really, really good,
Mm-hmm.
then the higher vibrational entities will be around and they will attach. Now, their attachment is a little different. Their attachment is not to feed off you. Their attachment is to contribute. So in essence, they're not going to um, harvest your energy of a lower frequency saying, okay, I need to recharge, I need to be here, or else I change.
Mm-hmm.
Let me explain one thing. And I know it's a little bit off topic, but it's not.
Okay.
Trying to find a wording for it now. Okay. Darker entities or lower frequency entities, they're kind of experience the fact that we are evolving and the energies of the planet itself is raising. Okay. So the planet, all of Gaia and all its elementals are raising in its vibration, and there are more people raising in vibration. So the energies in the field of where it dwells in, the energy is high. So in essence, it goes to places where there's pockets of lower frequency. For example, like I give you the example of bars,
Makes sense.
because it's not very comfortable. So when that entity attaches to this individual that is of a lower energy, it will do its best to keep the energy low, because it will be able to stay within a range of frequency. If it detaches from that and it doesn't quickly find another donor or another partner.
Host. Host.
Yes, host. Thank you. That's good. That's the word I was trying to figure out. Another host. If it's exposed to the elementals and all the energies there, guess what happens? It can't flourish, and it starts to disintegrate in a sense, or in this case, lose its range, and it starts to expand. Where the opposite works, that is, a higher vibration entity is not looking for a host, but it looks for a partner to play with. So it will attach to be able to maintain that higher frequency, not because it thrives off it, because by assisting that individual to stay in that higher frequency, it will allow for them to actually access higher consciousness, be able to create their own pattern of energy shifts. So example, say somebody is very negative most of the time, and then they have an experience that raises their vibration to be a bit more positive, for example, or more neutral.
Yes.
Then for many people, that's temporary. So they have something so an entity will come in and connect with that and continue to creating a pattern of staying in that positive or neutral state, which what happens is it rewrites the operating system of the individual, and also the frequencies of the body itself. It starts to raise it so that it would not be able to go back down to the same level. So it's actually contributing to raise the vibration and create a new pattern. So for example, back to the example of what I was saying. So if somebody has been very negative, but they started to have some elated experiences, which is more positive, for example, then the entity is assisting them to have more positive. They have a tendency to feel more comfortable in the positive, and they start to play more in the positive, and they will have less tendency to want to go into the negative as before. And then, of course, on a collective scale, they become much more in alignment with the energies of the planet and where the direction that we are going on a collective scale.
So, in essence, a soul is, let's say, a kind of an entity.
Yes.
And and if I understand correctly, the soul actually is a recorder.
Correct.
Or a collector of experience.
Correct.
While other entities are not really engaged in collecting or recording the experience, they're just in there to service or to service themselves or service others.
Yes, I mean, and when it does that, of course, as it serves others, it serves other people that have souls that have recorders, so it advances there. So it's all interconnected, right?
Okay, so let's talk about sovereignty. Is there any sovereignty when you said, okay, there are, let's say, entities that can assist us to pull up or lower us down? Where's the soul or sovereignty of the person, if there is any sovereignty of picking or choosing or attaching or disattaching from those entities?
Well, the soul that you have in the body plays a role. Your own personal entity plays a role. Your innate consciousness plays a role. So all of it is kind of participating. However, if there's a pattern of negative, darkness, or whatever you want to call it, with the individual, then what happens is, yes, you're going to have attachments to the negative entities coming along, which will accentuate negativity, will accentuate more of that lower state. And what it does is creates a saturation point. allowing its personal entity, its ego mind, its innate consciousness, and also the soul to record and to actually immerse itself in that negativity to the
Mm-hmm.
point it says, okay, we don't need this any longer. And then it can start activating the other part of it where it can tap into other resources. A lot of it is unconscious. A lot of it we don't know exactly what's occurring.
Mm-hmm.
However,
Should we?
mhm.
Should we? Should we be conscious about, let's say, our, let's say, environment of entities and pick, okay, I want to get attached or disattached to that one?
Yes, absolutely. As you become more observant, as you become more, how can I say, conscious of what's going on in your surroundings, you will be able to notice uh, any, first of all, the energies around you, the
Mm-hmm.
interactions that you have, and also the entities within yourself, but also the different parts of you that are communicating. And that becomes very instrumental in becoming more powerful in your navigation with all of it together. This is the thing, is that people have a tendency to be programmed to a point where they operate unconsciously. But as you become more
Mm-hmm.
aware and you become more conscious, you see all of that. You can feel that. Even if you don't see it, you can feel it. You can walk into a room and you can sense where somebody's at in their energy or what the energy in the room is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure with yourself too. If your daughter's having a bad day or your partner's having a bad day,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to say a single word. You don't even have to see them.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel them in the next room.
Yes.
Something's going on, right?
Yes.
That's the part that's observing. Now, if an entity is coming along, you can feel them attached to you because, in essence, you're going to have the same intuitiveness, the same feel of that energy there. And you go, oh, what's here? Or if they even enter the room, and they're
Mm-hmm.
coming into the room and they're hanging around there. Now, as you become that observant, you can walk into a room and say there's 4 people in the room and they're having a negative discussion. But you can walk in the room and you can feel the energy's thick. But if you sense the rest of the room, you're going to feel that wow, the energy is like all over the place. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
localized in the group that's in the corner of that room having this negative. Because what's happening is you're going to sense all these other negative entities in the room that are there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you become. And then you can choose to turn all that, just basically clear out the room, or you can just make sure that they don't, participate with you by keeping your vibration. So yes, it's beneficial to be conscious of it and aware.
Okay, so if we are conscious about entities, we didn't speak about possession. We'll speak later about possessions, but if we speak about entities, um, there's a danger of taking uh, uh, the aspect of victim.
Oh,
Okay, this attached me, that attached to me. I'm not in control. Um I have bad mood because I'm sick and tired because, let's say, I've got an entity and so forth and so forth. So I go to a healer. The healer will detach those entities, and I'm good for till next appointment.
yes.
Okay. Okay. So, what about, let's say, again, the issue of sovereignty, how we enable or empower people to take responsibility for what they feel, what they experience, whether it is with related to entities or with their own, let's say, innate entity or personality, whatever, which is the same.
Hmm. Yes. Well, the thing too with entities, when we're talking about that, um, we have sovereignty over ourselves and how we navigate through it. Now, if we are, like, for example, that you gave, somebody goes in, has entities attached to them, go to a practitioner or to a healer, whatever you want to call it, they clean it all out. But if we don't get into the basic victim operating system, then we are attracting, if you want to call it that, we're opening up the channel to have others step in and to control us.
Yes.
Okay, because the fact that we feel we're powerless. This is where the opening comes in. And so if we feel powerless,
Yes, we are programmed to be powerless.
yes, programmed to be powerless because it's not our true essence, then we're going to emanate that energy, and it's almost like it's an invitation. Basically, I'm powerless. I need something with power to come in, and then that's when the entity goes, "Oh, okay, I'll come in and I'll play that power for you." So the main thing is to observe. See, this is what I say to practitioners too, and I say to people, we need to look at, if you're coming in with attached entities, for example, we need to look at why. Okay? What invited them? What program are we and what frequency we are dwelling in? So if there's a pattern of, yes, I get inebriated heavily all the time because I can't stand life, and when I'm drunk, I don't feel bad or as bad until afterwards I recover, get sober or whatever you want to call it. So if there's that, or is that they are always negative in their environment and whatever they, the day-to-day stuff, or they feel like total victim. It's like, oh, life is horrible and everybody's out there to hurt me or anything of that nature. We need to look at that. We need to look at the basic pattern and program that is lowering your frequency to allow the victimizers to come in, entity or otherwise, right? So we need to look at that, because then you don't have to keep going back to the practitioner, because when you're not in that range, you're not going to have all these entities attaching to you,
So it's emotional. It's actually emotional therapy more than practical attachment or healing. The healing, or let's say the evolution, is being done on the emotional programming of perceiving the reality. I look at myself. I was very, very critical, and sometimes still is very critical person all around me. And I think I improved, but I have steps to improve more. But I see that releasing the criticality was part of anticipating bad luck.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if I'm very pessimistic, I'm less prone to, let's say, bad surprises. Okay.
Absolutely.
But I think that with assistance from my teachers and others and practitioners, I learned how to look for the positive side of things and to accept that whatever is happening is not polarized. It's just happening.
Right.
But this is I would say this teaching needs to be accompanied with experience, with positive experience that will enforce this program.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's repetitive programming. Unlike, let's say, in a computer program, I write the code, okay, it works. Dang. Okay. With me, with myself, and other humans like me, it's repetitive workout to replace the programs.
Yes.
So and my I would say my personal duties perspective of let's say spiritual evolution is creating more self-awareness and self-reflection of what I feel and how I react. Okay, and not fighting the victimhood aspect,
yes,
but rather replacing it.
Correct. Excellent. Excellent.
But this is, I would say, it's work in progress. Okay, and I would like the viewers of this of this. Let's say I invite viewers of this video to look at their life not as a victim, but as the creator. And if we look at it as a creator, okay, we have the power to change it. And we have the power to look at it as the positive side of, okay, we created this negative interaction or whatever reality we had, okay? Maybe we can grow from it to another different and more positive and more suitable. I would say positive, because positive is on duality. Let's say more suitable and more, let's say, teaching or rewarding experience. Okay.
Yes.
So let's take this approach that I grew for myself to the relationship that humans has with entities and non-incarnative beings. Okay, because people tend to look at themselves as victims. Mm-hmm. Oh, I've got possessed. Oh, I got this entity. I need to be clear up. Okay, it's not me. It's an entity that's got me, let's say, upset, or let's say arrogant, or I would say abusive. Okay, mm-hmm. It's not me. It's my hand. Okay, I didn't hit you. It's my hand that hit you.
That's correct. Great analogy. Great. Well, it's like anything. Everything that exists that we've plugged in our reality on a collective scale, individual scale, on all the different mm-hmm. realms and levels and so forth, all play a role. All of it is to facilitate advancement and further awareness, consciousness, and enlightenment. So even the dance, because this is an interesting conversation I had with my guide years ago, mm-hmm. And because I was aware of it, but it's always great to have another reflection. Mm-hmm. And my guide, of course, that I'm talking about is in non-form, is not in form, so it doesn't have a physicality, but was presenting mm-hmm. with me at the time. And one of the things in the conversation, I go, I always observe that everything serves for one purpose or another. And the one thing, and I will say he, because he was presenting in a male physicality, even though it was, sort of a silhouette type of thing. The one thing he had said to me is that don't ever think that there's anything in existence that in one way or another is not supporting us, even in the most polarized and what you guys can call negative or evil or anything of that nature. Mm-hmm. Those are all definitions, of course. He says, nothing exists if it's not in one way or another serving you or serving the collective. Okay. The only reason polarity exists is because we're using it as a way to learn and grow and so forth. It's not an absolute. It's not a requirement to have us to grow. Mm-hmm. However, this sequence of experiences and creation, we have brought that in. So even the darkest of entities or pockets of consciousness mm-hmm. will serve and will remain in that polarized state until it mm-hmm. no longer is required. One of the things that I was shared also was, because at the time we were looking at all these role players that were playing very negative roles, which still exist, that run our world, our systems, and so mm-hmm. forth. And some, have come from either from other dimensions or have come from other planets or from another physical form that have, interacted with the human species and made modifications and so forth. So don't think that just because they've done what they've done, that in one way or another, it didn't set the stage for growth for you guys. I mean, don't ever think that there's anything that is a miscreation, is a design in its perfection.
This reminds me of my email signature, that I am perfectly imperfect, and you are the reader, and you are the viewer. You are also perfectly imperfect.
Beautiful, beautiful. So the one thing that was shared with me at the time, which stuck with me, and I've used it for many few decades now, is that in a way, when I was having more of my human experience, which I still do, there were times that I was doing what a lot of people end up doing. Maybe not to the same intensity and degree, but I had a sense of, let's call it judgment for people that played negative roles. Okay? And my judgment was not that they're horrible, whatever, that they shouldn't be doing that. And that's, you're affecting the whole and whatever else. As almost like that was a disease. And you wanted to be well, but this was the disease, and we have to get rid of the disease, for example. So what my guide had told me, because in the same conversation that I just finished explaining to you, he said, the only reason they're there and the only reason they're playing the role is to facilitate. However, there are also consciousness, they are also soul, and they're also me, as you, as source, as everything that is. They want to relinquish that role as soon as possible, once we no longer need their services. So someone that is very negative, or someone that is so-called the victimizer and controlling our planet to stay in the victim state, to stay in the fear state, and so forth. Once we no longer need that, they will retire. I'm done. See you later. Don't need to do this anymore. They're just waiting. They're playing the role. And one thing that my guide has said to me very powerfully, and that stuck with me too, it is very hard to play a negative role.
Really?
It takes a lot. He says only a specific soul and entity can actually take that on. And they have to actually volunteer and be able to be such a service to say, okay, this is a hard job. I'm going to go do it. Okay? And don't think that a light worker comes on the planet, what people call light workers. Again, another label. But a light worker comes in and saying they're doing the sacrifice. In fact, there is a certain level of not so-called sacrifice, but a certain duty. But coming in with a negative role is even a much stronger duty. And it shifted my perspective of that. And I thought, well, okay, that totally resonates. That makes total sense, that even at the mind level. And I started to see things very differently. And even my communication with people and entities, because I have done clearing of entities for many decades. And my approach was very different, has been very different for quite a long time now. Is I will have a communication with the entity that's in the space. And I say, okay, why do you feel that you're here? What do you need to do? Well, and then I would say, I always give them the offer, would you like to be relinquished from that role? And if it says yes, and if it says no, I would ask why. But if it says yes, then I will send them off. I will assist them. I will assist them to actually go through that, that blending and transmuting aspect of it, so it doesn't have to actually stay here. Like I've gone into, and I'm just going to give you one more example, and I'll let you navigate further. I do house cleaning, or have been. I haven't done it for quite a while. I still do it, but I don't do it commercially, for example, in a sense where people hire me to go do that. Sometimes I do it as a favor or whatever. And of course, when the entities know that you do, they tend to visit you much more often. So our house becomes a clearinghouse. So I had to create vortex, what do you call it, portals outside, so that they go there, and I direct them there. But in essence, when, for example, I lived in an apartment prior to this one, to this house that I'm living now, which I'm moving out again. When I was in the apartment, for example, when I entered there, um, there was all these entities all over the place, but a lot of the entities were ones that were kind of caught there and hanging around. So when I moved in the apartment, they were there, and I go, okay, what are you guys doing here? And a lot of them were felt that they were caught and they didn't know how to leave. And when I say
Wow.
that to a certain degree, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is the only home I know. Yeah, but you don't have a physicality anymore. You don't even have a soul anymore. You're just basically the remaining of this entity that's holding on. And they weren't dark entities per se.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were of a little bit lower frequency, yes, but they weren't, haunting the place or anything of that nature. But they were there and they were moving around. I could see their shadows and so forth. And my partner would see the shadows and I go, oh, okay, there's all this. So I would have a conversation with him, and then I would ask him if I can show you a way to go back and merge with all of it, and don't have to be caught here. Would you be open to that? And then 99% of the time, yes. There would be odd occasions they would say no, because they felt that they were um, requested by service.
Okay.
And what do I mean by that? There are people, say in the building, that, for example, I'll give you one example. I had one entity that was next door that kept coming into my space all the time. And I would ask, okay, do you want to leave? No, I don't, because I'm still needed next door.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I would ask, I have a conversation. Well, what do you need it for? What's going on there? He says, well, because they're from a lower energy and I'm helping them maintain that lower energy. Plus, it's part of my family because this particular entity was a grandfather that had passed away
Mm-hmm.
and they were still hanging around with the family. I said, oh, okay, well, that's what you're doing. I said, but if you're going to come and visit here, I don't want you to participate too much here because we don't need you here in your vibration. So stay next door, go wander around some other apartments. And it obliged it. It never showed up again. And so that's the rare occasions, and as rare as it is, there's still a percentage of that happens. But most of them get kind of caught here and don't know how to actually leave, and so you help them home. You help them. That's all you do.
Okay, so how can you advise, let's say, the viewer, which has no ability to sense and view entities, okay, regain its sovereignty and detach itself from entities that it doesn't like or wish to clear places?
Okay. Well, if you're totally not aware of it, except that you're feeling the negative aspect of it or you're sensing something,
Mm-hmm.
then what I would recommend, I mean, they are open to communicate. Okay. So in essence, if you drop or even go into a state where you're not afraid of them,
Mm-hmm.
okay, then the communication is more of an ego level field.
Mm-hmm.
You can communicate with them. You can ask them what they're doing, why they're here, whatever else, and it will come in as thought forms or whatever it is for you. Now, if you choose not to have them and don't want to have the communication, what you're going to have to shift and say, listen, I am in a physical form. I am here with my own entity. I am here to have this experience of this space, and you're not welcome in this space because I am the one. Now, I used to play with that sometimes. I used to say, well, if you're going to pay the rent, then you can hang around here, but I'm paying the rent. So, in essence, you're not welcome. It's just more of a playful. But I sincerely did that in a playful way. So you drop the fear part of it or feel that, there's something there, even if it's a negative. If you actually look at it, even if you can't see it, just
Mm-hmm.
feel that part and you hold on to your own energy. You say, okay, listen, I'm here. I'm holding the space. I'd like you guys to leave, or I'd like you to leave if it's just one.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can say, guys, because I am going to occupy the space. But if you're holding negative energies and you're afraid of it, then it's like this. You know what a magnet does? It's
Yes.
a magnet. And you're asking this other magnet to come apart. Well, guess what? If you're in fear and they are operating in that frequency, you're stuck. It's like even if they're just in the space, if you're holding the energy in the space. So what you have to do is get rid of that polarized negative part of it, so that what you're doing is deactivating the negative, and then you can allow that to leave a lot easier. The same thing with the space, right? So
Yes.
in essence, what I do is I open up, and you all can open up the love that you have and emanate it throughout the house if you're doing the house. Or even if you're dealing with an entity, open up to that. And if it's attached to you, you basically envision in your mind's eye this love that you have opening up in your whole body. It's like somebody turns on the light bulb, and the light bulb is now illuminating throughout all the cells in your body. You just envision that. And it's like almost it's coming out inside of your body, and it's like you're this bulb of light, right? The same way you turned on your light is lighting up the room. And you feel, and what happens is the entity, if it's a darker one, will detach because it doesn't feel comfortable with that light. And then from that point, you can ask it to leave. Just ask it to leave. Even if you don't have a communication, say, listen, I ask you to leave. I thank you. First of all, before you do that, this is very instrumental, is thank it. I thank you for the services. I thank you for the attachments. I thank you for everything that you've created and accentuating my polarity and all of that. And I thank you. And I know that you are coming from love and service. Okay? However, I no longer require your services because I got it now. I understand it. I'm able to better navigate now. And I realize that I am not a victim, even though I did play the victim role, and you became as the victimizer because I needed that. And I thank you for that. So you start off with the thank you. Then from there you say, okay, I choose no longer to require your services, and therefore I don't need you to be here, not attached to me or even in the space, because I am come here to raise the vibration of the space. Once you've done that, then you say, okay, I'm going to facilitate by illuminating this light. And so you illuminate that light within yourself. Just envision yourself. You close your eyes and just see this light expanding throughout first of all through your body, then throughout the room, and then the rest of the rooms of the apartment or house or wherever you are. And allow them. And then with that light, it's almost like you're opening a path for them to be able to just leave the premises. Now, sometimes the entities will not want to leave. Release that, but they won't stay in your space. They will go somewhere else. Okay. And other times they will use that to actually create enough light within themselves so that they can leave. That's as basic as you can do it. It's very simple. But like I said, if you're going in, you're afraid of them, or you're going in with judgment. And this is the thing, what happens. I've had practitioners that say, listen, I work on people, and then sometimes they attach to me, or they won't leave my space. And I have all these crystals, and I have all these things, right? And my question to them is, are you afraid of them? Are you judging them? Are you looking at their polarized state and making that polarized state as something negative to you? Are you depending on crystals or other things to clear it for you, or smudging or whatever? I mean, they do play a role. I'm not saying they don't. But if you really want your empowerment and your sovereignty, that you need to let go of that part, because then you can walk and go wherever. They're not going to hang around, and they're going to be easy to clear, even if you're working on somebody. Like if I go in, for example, I had a student, which was my old partner from some time ago, that wanted to learn how to do this because she felt that, oh, this is something I can do too. And she had some gifts because she was able to see certain things. But when we were working on it, I had to keep reminding her, don't see that what we're clearing, even though sometimes they present not so attractive, because she was able to see it, to judge it, or to see it that you have to fight it, or that you're the light and they're the dark. Don't see it that way, because then you're going to have the fight.
Duality.
Yes.
Duality comes in.
Yes, and then the conflict of duality comes in, and that's not what you want to do. So at first, it was harder for her to be able to do it. Eventually, she got more comfortable with that, right? Because sometimes when you're clearing them, especially if you can see them, they will come right up close to you. And if it stirs up any fear, then it's going to be harder to clear. So that's where you have to do work on
Mhm.
yourself to see them as another aspect of you, in a sense. And it's there of service. And you say, "Hi, I'm here. How can I serve you? How can I assist you? Because you're no longer required in this particular individual. And how
Mhm.
can I, facilitate you or something of that nature?" There are different things that you will learn. And the reason I'm sharing this is because a lot of people go in with the approach that they're the enemies, that's the dark stuff, and I'm Mr.
Mhm.
Light and or Mrs. Light or whoever, and I'm coming in to clean.
Yeah.
Uh, yes, you are in a way, but you're not coming in with that polarized state. You come in of service and you're coming in as an equal too. And then you are much more powerful to be able to do that. Because even communication, for example, a lot of people say, well, how can I communicate with these entities or whatever that's going
Mhm.
on?
Yes.
If we're going in as seeing them as negative or judgmental or anything of that nature, the communication is hard to establish, period. But if you see it as, okay, I see you there, okay, let's communicate, but you have no judgment about them and no fear about them, then you can communicate, and they'll communicate with you. Because I found that that's how it works, because that's from my own experience, but from
Mhm.
also hearing from other experiences from people that have worked on it. Um, because if you're coming in with that, then communication's not there, and a lot of times they'll play with you, and not in ways that you want to.
So, in essence, the key for spiritual evolution is releasing fear.
Yes,
Once you release fear, you're able to face and release all the negativities because you don't fear them.
correct.
So, so in essence, fear is our biggest teacher.
Yes,
Let's say
absolutely.
most powerful teacher.
Correct. Correct. And then, because of that fear, being your teacher, you bring in other teachers along, and it can be animals, it can be other entities or humans. Because in essence, it's all trying to help you to get to the maximum piece part of fear, and then dissolve it.
The thing with yes, the thing with fear, and as a child, I was a small, skinny, and beaten kid. Okay, and I was always in fear,
Mm.
and I was long distance runner because I used to run away.
Mm.
So the thing with fear, okay, um, is this is I think this from my view of life, fear is the essence of being to live in 3D. Is
Yes.
to deal with fear,
Yes.
to deal with fear, and to release it. And I
Correct.
have many fears, and I'm dealing with fears. And my fears today is these days fears are different from, let's say, fears about 10 years ago when the children were small and so forth, and health issues and so forth. And I see fear uh, as levels of evolution, of evolvement. Okay,
Yep.
some fears I know I'm not ready to cope to deal with, and I know that I'm not ready, and I'm not inviting them. But the other ones, let's say, I know that I dealt with,
Hmm.
and I'm more able to let go of them and cope with them, and I trust myself that okay, I can deal with this situation.
Mm.
Okay? It's not a trigger anymore. It's not
Correct.
driving anymore in my life,
Correct.
right? So so the triggers that we seek in my life, the most horrible fears in my life, uh, I have fears of losing control.
Mm.
Okay, and and fear of losing sovereignty. I'm very vigilant for my sovereignty.
Mm.
I'm very defiant in my nature. And I think also it's fear-based, but and I'm not ready to let go.
Yes, but the thing is, what helps you let go is to replace it with a higher understanding of that. For example, the fear of losing your sovereignty and using your control or being in control. You need a program that convinces you. You need a program that tells you otherwise, that tells you, in fact, that you are not in control, everybody else is in control, for you to hold on to the whole idea that I need to stay in control. Because in essence, once that's gone, the need to stay in control does not become a factor anymore. It's not part of your experience. Because then at that point, you know that you're navigating your life, you're creating your reality, you're doing all of that. You're in charge of all of that. So you see all of that in that regards. So that is not necessary. So in fact, you don't have to be vigilant about your sovereignty or control, because first of all, the opportunities for being out of control is not there. Second of all, it's like not even unknowing. It goes even further than that. It's just, it doesn't even come into your recollection. It's just, if somebody says to you, oh, I want you to do this, and instead you say, no, I don't want to do this, you say, no, actually that doesn't resonate with me, not interested. That's it. You don't even, it's so, like, for example, I remember being, and I still have a little bit of it, I had an issue with people telling me what to do, okay, as a child.
I still live with a partner that tells me everything, always what to do.
Yes.
I'm following orders.
Right. And, so that doesn't sit well with me. It was never an issue, because as far as I was concerned, if you're going to tell me what to do, it has to first resonate. Second of all, I have to see how I benefit from it, in a sense. When I say not benefit, but it's actually helping me to see something that I need to shift. And of course, everything is shift. But so in essence, with that whole idea of, how can I say it? Sometimes the words don't come always the way I want to say it, but the thought's there, but the words don't come up. But okay, so somebody telling me what to do, I always felt, in a sense, like a resistance. It's like, and it's almost like, no, you dare tell me what to do. And I didn't reflect it that way, but I felt a part of me saying that, right? And then I would go into your part, what you said, defiant. So if they said to do this, I do the opposite sort of thing.
Yes.
And that's how I was doing things before. And then I started realizing sometime later, I mean, I did that for a long time. Start realizing is, why does it bother me that I have to go into defiant? And then the story came up, the program came up, that really I don't have control, and everybody wants to tell me what to do because I don't have freedom of my own choice, right? And I realized that was just an illusion. It was like, no, that's just a story. That's a program. That's not real. So in essence, I had to start shifting that part of me to the point where when people say something, and then something else came up, and I don't think we have enough time for all of that, but another thing came up. So one thing I started to realize is, like, it's my choice if I want to participate, listen, or take that path at all. Really, I mean, ultimately I have the choice. And even when somebody would say, well, if you don't do this, you're not going to get this. And I'm going to go, well, so what? I don't get that. Okay, I'm not going to do it. And I wouldn't go defiant. I just choose not to. Say, well, no, it doesn't resonate. I'm not going to do that. Well, you're not going to get this. A lot of times, if it was something that I really wanted or part of my experience, I would get it anyways, maybe from another source, but whatever, it would still show up. It was never an issue. At first, that doesn't appear that way, because at first you think, well, if I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to get this type of thing. And I'm not saying I'm 100% with that, because I still have some of those tendencies to show up. But the other part that comes into the equation was asking the question is, why do I feel that I have to listen to what other people tell me to do? And the story came up. I like to be liked. I wanted to be accepted.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, there's the other equation of the program. Because that stimulator is like, if I do what they tell me to do, then first of all, they won't be angry at me. Second of all, they'll feel that I'm partner with them. But then they would like me more. They would love me more. They will accept me more. You know, all of those stories came up, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And then you have to address that part of it because that's a program too, you know. And so I had to work on shifting that part also. And then you find that this whole thing about control or whatever else, you're basically very conscious of your own navigation, and you don't need to be, you know, in resistance or anything of that nature, and it flows, and things will come. Now it doesn't mean that you won't have any challenges, because what happens, a challenge comes along of your own creation, co-creation with other aspects of yourself, to just see other layers. Like, for example, what you were saying about the fears, right? You may not have the same fears as before, but other layers come in. That, first of all, you weren't ready. Now you're more ready for it. So you're going to have different things. And the same thing happens with me. I mean, there's levels of stuff that I never had to deal with before, or at least I dealt with it, but I didn't really have the same intensity that I have now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you kind of get comfortable to the sense of, okay, you got to move every 3 years. Yes, you have no money and you whatever, you know, you have all these things, but you get neutral with that, and none of it bothers you anymore. And then another level of equation comes in. It's like, okay, compromise health, and now deal with those things, even though they're the same. But now
Mm-hmm.
you're doing it with a compromised health, for example. That's another part of the equation. So it goes into a deeper level of fear that now you get to experience and then have to address and clear that too. So it's amazing how all of that works.
So, and it's all our own creation, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's something that our soul and entity is creating for us to experience.
Correct. Correct.
And I know some people in my family who have no psychosomatics illnesses, okay? And it killed them.
Mm.
Absolutely. And it's coming from the emotions and negative emotions and whatever. And we talked about entities. Maybe a sickness, let's say a long-term sickness, could be also an entity, isn't it? It has an entity of its own.
Yeah. Well, yeah, something of that nature, like illness, is also an entity. Yes. So if you refer, this is what I think you may have to go, right? Am I correct?
No,
No? Oh, okay.
no. They invited me for dinner. I said no later on.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay. I don't want to hold you up. So,
okay.
Say illness. If let's take one example, because a lot of people can relate with this one. Say cancer. Cancer is an entity. Because so many people have had it, there's this pocket of consciousness and how it unfolds, okay? And how it actually works. So if we get into the belief, or we get caught up in the idea that we need to suffer or have something to compromise us, for example, if we're not comfortable with life or whatever, you know, I'm just giving an example, and we're almost looking for a way out, or we want to get pity from people, or we want to escape from doing what everybody else is doing, then we will call upon or tap into the entity of an illness that will basically stop you from doing or lead you a direction that you feel that you can't do without its help. So when you tap into the cancer entity, it is a collective cancer entity that you can localize for your own specific requirement. And then what it does is alters the frequency and alters the pattern of how the cells operate and respond, because now you're giving it new instructions, new frequencies, so that it starts to develop. Now, if that activates fear, that fear can be used to create another shift within yourself, or to, accentuate it to a degree. How can I say? To actually go deeper into that disempowered. Because look at it this way. We talk about having no control.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A lot of times we have no control because there is other people telling us what to do. Then there are systems and authorities that tell us what to do. Then there are different cultural stuff that tell us what to do. Religions.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get
Family.
into, I'm sorry?
Family as well.
Family, right?
Yeah.
So all of these are levels of we have no control because we're in this situation, or we have all these inputs. The same thing applies when it comes to, I'm trying to find the right words for this. Okay, let's take the medical system.
Okay.
You have an ailment, and you go there, and they're testing you out. It's all fear-based, but then what happens is they say, okay, we diagnosed you with cancer. Now our frequency drops because they are basically playing the role for our frequency to drop, because they just gave us news that the entity that we've taken on is actually, oh, now we can go even further with us. And you're now creating a spiral of that. Now, of course, you're going to talk about it with your family, and your family, oh my God, poor you, this and that. And, and then there's more fear. They're going to lose you, or this is, all their stuff. And that becomes much more. And so you're basically having all these combining entities and all these energies, and you're creating a pool of that energy, right?
Right.
And it alters your reality, who comes in, who doesn't come in, and so forth, right? Even as playmates, right? They're all part and parcel of this whole stream of things that have been activated within that environment. I was going to lead into this in a way. I'm just trying to find out how to do it. So it becomes very crucial at that point how we can shift all of that by looking at the fear of that news, that diagnostics or diagnosis, and all the people that are going to play that role. For example, if you got diagnosed with cancer, and many people experience that. I'm just giving you an example. Already you've activated this, but the doctor or practitioner, whoever, they're most likely going to play the role that you need the most, and that is to kind of create more fear. So they're going to say, well, you know something? You need chemotherapy right away, or you need to go surgery right away, or you need to have radiation right away. Okay? And they're going to push fear, because if we don't grab it right away, this is you're not going to make it, or something's going to get worse, or you can't stop it, or whatever it is. Now, say you choose to go with chemotherapy. You agree. Chemotherapy is another entity, a very dark entity with a very low energy frequency. Don't think that chemotherapy is not an entity. And it's a very reinforced entity, because everyone that has a negative experience with chemotherapy, which people feel sick or feel that in one way or another that it will kill you, because it does, kills all the rest of yourself. That is all part and parcel of all the instructions. So when you take that on, you're not just taking on the entity of the cancer and fighting it or whatever it is. You're taking in all of that. So it becomes very powerful in accentuating that experience within you to the degrees that it does. So it becomes very powerful, where you need to, not fight it. This is one of the things I say to people is you're not here to fight cancer, for example, because that's the belief system, because that creates this whole entity around that, because that's all identification to the fact that that's negative, that's horrible, and this is, we have to fight it fire with fire. Because when we're looking at it, the majority of people will fight the entity of cancer, for example, with other negative fighting tools, and see it as an enemy makes it even much more powerful.
Yeah.
But if you enter in it, say the doctor turns around and says to you, okay, you got cancer, I'm just going to give you the flip side. And you say, oh, okay, it's great to know that I have that energy, that entity within me, or so forth. Okay, great. And then you go home. And they're saying, oh, no, you got to get treatments. No, let me reflect on this, whatever. You go home. They go, okay, cancer. All right, I call you entity. What are you here to teach me? What are you here to show me? What are you here to facilitate you? I know I called you in. I know that we've chosen to participate and dance this together. What are we here to do together?
Yeah, but your elevated approach is with no fear. Most of humans have the most prominent fear of death.
Correct.
If you have the knowledge, it's more. As for myself, I know the existence of the soul and say the infinite existence of soul. It's not a belief; it's a knowledge. It's way beyond of belief.
Yeah.
Most people don't have it.
Correct.
Right? So it's that's why I see the first step for spiritual teaching is understanding that we are infinite. Release the fear of death.
Yes. And that's the thing too. And then there's an exercise that people can do. This is one exercise. Is if you have the fear of death, which most people do, because the fear of death relates very, very much so. Because I mean, I was diagnosed with some ailments that basically they said, oh, you don't stand a chance to die, right? I mean, to live. You're going to die anyways, very soon.
Yes, we all die.
Yes,
we are mortals. We should die.
Yeah, we're just going to accentuate. Yes, because this thing that you have in you right now that's taking over your body is going to bring you there really quickly within days, or whatever. And in some cases, you would hear the opposite. You would hear differently, and they say, "Oh yeah, you're already dead. You just haven't figured it out," sort of thing. But it was interesting because one of the practitioners that said to me and said, "Oh, listen, you are way beyond recovery. Okay, you have less than 10% chance that you're going to live 60 days." Okay. So all I said to her, I said, "Oh, no big deal. I've already been there. I know what's on the other side. I find it much easier if I did leave. No problem." And she looked at me and she goes, "Well, with that attitude, you'll probably make it for sure." Because you're not engaging fear. You're not engaging that other part of it. So it's true what you said. Once you realize, you break through or dissolve the fear of death, because that's ingrained in us. As a child, you don't come with that.
Right.
It is programmed in you. Some of it comes from the lineage, yes, absolutely. But it still has to be activated. So what I say to people, and this is how I had to deal with it, and I've taught other people to do it, is for you to go into a meditative state and see yourself going to death. To the worst scenario you can create. You're going to die. Okay? See yourself going through the death process in your mind's eye. Okay? And when you actually follow through with it completely and see yourself, okay, you have no more physicality, you died. You saw, sometimes the fear of suffering is way worse than dying. Okay? So see yourself suffering. See yourself that way. What happens, it takes a bit of practice. And I'm hoping to do a program that will help people do it together. So we can, I would have an audio thing that they can listen that brings them into that state, and so that they can face the fear of death. and I would guide them through it. Because that's been popular. I have helped with people to do that, but I want to do it so that people can, without having a private session, be able to do it. But anyways, besides that, when you go into that, walk yourself through the deepest fear. So if it's a fear of suffering, see yourself in that worst state of suffering you can imagine in your mind's eye, and let those emotions come up, those fears, whatever it is, and hold the fears, build it up as much as you can. Because what happens, Duty, for people is if you do it effectively by just staying tracking instead of backing off, you will notice that it will get stronger and stronger and stronger, but then after a while it starts to reverse because it starts to fade away. You can't sustain it. It becomes very difficult to sustain. So it starts to break down, and at a point, a certain level of peace starts to come in through you. Well, and you will find it more difficult to actually create the fear or activate the fear after a while. Okay, and sometimes you have to do it more than once. You have to do it, but each time you chip away at it, you'll find that once you've got to the point where the fear is no longer there, there's a sense, such a powerful peace, that you get to a point where you're okay here, being here or not being here. So the fear of death dissolves. And you will notice that once that fear is done, the fear of certain things that you would want to do, but you're so afraid to do. Like, for example, somebody wants to skydive, jumping out of an airplane with a parachute. What's the scariest part? That the thing is not going to work and you're going to hit the ground and you're going to die, right? When you take that fear away, not of skydiving, but of fear of death, all of a sudden that may or may not resonate for you. You're not going to have issues with it. It's like, okay, I got a job. A knowing comes up that you're really actually in control. And you can decide if you're going to check out or not from that experience, but there's not going to be any fear. That's just one example I'm just giving you.
Okay. As for anecdote for skydiving, my fear about skydiving is actually the emotion, the feeling of falling. It's not the crash, it's not the jump, it's the essence of falling, of traveling with no bottom.
Yes. Now, what if you actually tune into that? What's the fear that activates with that jumping?
I believe it's something to do from early for another lifetime, but of kind of falling from a cliff or something like that. But it's the feeling of the fall.
Okay, so if you do the exercise where you envision yourself falling, jumping out of a plane and falling, see what comes up for you as the fear. You can ask yourself ahead of time, I'd like to understand what is triggered in me when I'm falling. Because a lot of times you'll find the program will come up. And for some people, what I found is the fear of loss of control that is covered up. You can't really see it, but the fact is I'm falling. I can't navigate or I can't control what happens. Because like you said, from a past life or some other situation, or sometimes it's a lineage from somebody else's past life, from family, that led to possibly death, or that led to suffering or something of that nature when you lose that control. Because that's huge. This loss of control relates to everything, to many things, actually. For example, I have that one too. It's getting better. It's not 100% either. Even the example is, like for my example, not having any money. Okay? Logically,
yes,
this, it's the scarcity thing, but logically it's like, so what? Don't have any money. But then you want to ask, okay, but why is so fearful? What is so challenging with having no money? And the thing that came up for me personally, and this relates with many people, was that, oh, I lose the full control. I will not have in charge of what I eat, where I stay, what I get done or don't do, or
Mm-hmm.
any of that nature. There was a fear of now other people will dictate, and it's just a story, a program, other people will dictate what I do. It's like going back to your childhood, and it's like feeling the memory of, oh, I have no say. Mom and dad tell me what I eat, when I eat, how I
Mm-hmm.
eat, whatever I do. Mom and dad tells me what I have or don't have. Mom and dad tells me what I can or cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And it related to that. It's like, because when we're growing up, we go, oh, great, I want to go to school, get a good job so that I can go out and do what I want to do. I don't want to be under the realm of my parents. I don't want to be in the realm of anybody else. And this is why people do it. The working and doing, taking on jobs and stuff, is the fear of lack of control. Because if this, the way the system teaches you, how we're taught, is that if you have money, you have control, and the more money you have more control. That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
the system taught, you're taught.
Yes.
So now I can live wherever I want. I can travel anytime I want. I can do whatever I want. I can even buy people if I want. When I say buy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
services or whatever, right? I can do lots of things. And I can actually, the next level was, the more money I have, more power I have over other people, more control I have over other people. And I can tell people to do whatever I want them to do. So those are the conditioned programmed stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, not that I had that level where I wanted to control people, because that's the last thing I want to do is, have that part. But the one thing that came up for me the strongest is that I lose control. I lose control of my own life, of where I go, what I do, don't do, whatever. And that was the part that was coming up in the fear component, because it was
Mm-hmm.
interesting, is like loss of control. Because even the knowing part, and this is the interesting part, the knowing has to become your reality, has to live it, because knowing that you're in control and you create your reality is the first step, and it's a powerful step. But then you have to exercise it. You have to start using it. And you start shaping your life around that. You go beyond the belief, you become experientially active with that knowing. So you start putting it into your reality.
Okay. Thank you for that. I really relate to that because I wasn't unemployed for 16 months, and we were assisted by family and supported by family, and to me it was very difficult lesson to be assisted.
Mm-hmm.
I was very humbled and very grateful, and it was a very difficult lesson for me to be assisted, not
Yes,
to be dependent.
correct. Yes.
I didn't see it as assistance. I see it as being dependent.
Mm.
And I was not requested. I was not required to, let's say, to pay services, but I felt like I'm dependent.
Right.
So I really relate to that. Um, I also would like to relate to the fear, which is very deeply ingrained in me, is fear of pain and suffering.
Mm.
I believe I released the fear of dying with my knowledge of reincarnation and the soul existence, but I still have deep fear of pain and suffering.
Mm. Yes.
And that on belief of let's say from suffering in situational places, and also suffering in from sickness and health issues.
Right.
And this is I would say a major demon in my life.
Mm.
It's not cancer. I as a child I was terrified from cancer, but since my mom died from cancer, I was 27, I believe, and she was dying for 6 months. It was terrible experience.
Mm.
I no longer fear cancer, but I have still a fear of suffering and being let's say immobilized and losing functionality of the body and so forth.
Yep. I can
and
Clearly.
growing old. And my stepmother, she was paralyzed for almost 3 years, and she was in full conscious, and so it's terrible. So I wouldn't like to create it, so I won't elaborate on that. But this is a kind of a big issue for me,
Mhm.
is dealing with suffering in general, and pain in general.
Right.
So I wouldn't like to delve in it because I'm not ready for that yet. Okay, I would like to discuss what you said
If you
about.
want, I mean, I can play with it on a general cases without rather.
It's um, I'm not ready for this.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, yet. Maybe another discussion, or maybe um,
Okay.
uh, in previous when we discussed the entities, you said about you mentioned about interacting and discussing with them. Okay,
Hmm.
speaking with them. So, and this when you said that, I was uh, I was wondering. Okay, we need to as we evolve and experience more than just the physicality. We need to uh, to evolve and strengthen our discern muscle.
Hmm.
Or whether is this my thought? Is this the soul? Is this the entity? Is this a possession? So I would like to see to ask you how do you develop your own discern about who's talking now, whose thought is this? Okay,
Okay.
who's thinking now?
That's a good one. That's a good one. So that's a good point because a lot of people, you know, have the same thing. It's like, how do I know who's talking? You know, is it my entity? Is it my mind? Is it another entity? Is it something channeling through me? Is it my soul, or anything of that nature?
Mhm.
And that's an excellent point because a lot of times it can be, you know, unless you um, are able to discern, um, you kind of almost don't know on a logical way. Now, depending what you want to listen to, you direct it. So if you're going to want to talk to your ego mind, okay, for example, you're going to say, okay, I am having this communication with my ego mind, and
Mhm.
all other parts of me, you're not welcome to the discussion at this point. Okay. Now, when you're having the conversation, then you say, okay, ego mind, you keep spewing out all these ideas or whatever it is. What is your agenda? What's your purpose? What do you want to see from this? You know, and you have the conversation.
Mhm.
And you stay focused because sometimes you'll find that it comes from a different viewpoint or whatever it is. And say, okay, is this you? Like, for example, you get a thought and somehow it doesn't feel like, okay, is that really coming from my, you say, ego mind, is it you that's sharing this or not? And it will. Now, sometimes you'll hear two voices or hear two thought streams or feel or have two
Mhm.
thought streams. Okay, which one of you? You know, so you can have that. You get more used to where it's coming from once you practice that for a while. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. But the key part that so that's that. You can talk to the entity. You can talk to your body too. People muscle test. That's really communication with the body. Now, the reason people muscle test is because they don't want their ego mind to jump in, right? But doesn't mean that's 100% evil.
Mhm.
So you have a conversation with the body. You say, okay, ego mind, you step out. You're not talking. You're going to have the body. So you say, body, how can I serve you? What part of this experience that I can assist you with? Or what are you trying to tell me about this situation or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
For example, you have somebody has cancer in their body. So you have a conversation with the body. Okay? You can have a conversation with your higher self too about it, but have separate ones. Now, what
Okay.
I recommend to people,
Um, you spread the discussion to many entities. Okay.
yes,
Um, the point of discernment is identifying them, right?
right,
Say, right. How do you know? Okay, am I speaking now with the soul? Is it soul really? Oh, maybe you are the ego that's pretending to be a soul.
right, 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 right.
Uh, right? Or let's say I'm channeling. Okay, I'm
Mhm.
channeling something. Well, is it really something else out of inside myself? Maybe it's my soul. Maybe it's a previous um, lifetime is speaking now, entity from life. So how do you discern and tell, okay, I know this is the soul. I know this is the body. I know this is the previous lifetime and so forth.
That takes practice. Um, the reason that I say that is because you have to be the observer at this point in time, right? So whenever information is coming through you, to you, whatever it is, you kind of tap into the source of it. You have to kind of feel where it's coming from. Okay? Like, for example, if it's the ego mind, it's very polarized, very fear based, it's very emotional driven, it's all of that. You feel all different levels. Entities will share information, for example, if you're channeling information that actually has sometimes polarization, sometimes it may not resonate with what's going on a bigger perspective.
Mm-hmm.
When you're getting your soul communicating, and the reason I say here is because that's the heart chakra is where the soul communicates through. Um, in essence, what happens in that regards is that when you're tuning into that, it's very calming. It's very when your soul's talking, it doesn't talk in polarization. It does not create and stimulate emotional charges, being
Mm-hmm.
positive, negative, whatever it is. It's very calm. Because a lot of times people ask the question is like I'm asking for help from my higher self, but I have all this dialogue sort of thing going in my head.
Mm-hmm.
How do I know? So I say, okay, just focus on the heart. So focus there, just okay, and communicate. And the answer that you're going to get that's very calm, very clear, is coming from your soul. If it's
And
coming
and
with polarity,
and the first one, it's very
yes,
important.
the
The
first
first
one,
one.
yes,
The second, and the rest are, I would say, contaminations from the ego and from the mind.
correct. Because what happens is the soul will give you one, like you ask the soul, this is the way the soul works. Say you ask the question, um, I'd like to understand what's going on here. And it says, well, you're reacting from a program. It might say just that. Very calmly,
Mhm.
very clear. Ego mind comes in and says, what program? Remember what happened here and remember what happened there. And you
Mhm.
look at this situation and so forth. And it's going to give you a whole bunch of other things normally. And a lot
Mhm.
of it sometimes contradicts each other itself or it does all types of things. And it's
Mhm.
emotionally charged. That's one way, one powerful way you can actually discern where it's coming from. Because the soul does not give you all of that at all. Okay? The other thing is too, sometimes people are channeling. And when we're talking about channeling, you have to use your own discernment. That means you don't run it into your logical mind. You run it into your heart. What resonates, what doesn't resonate. Because you're going to get information that may not resonate because it's not applicable. Or it may be stimulating. Because don't think channeling is the ultimate. This
I'm
is
not.
one of the things
I'm
I've
not.
said exactly. I've said to people, just be let's put it this way. I'm just making it clear, okay?
Mhm.
Some people get all excited that they're channeling.
I'm not personally. I'm not supportive by any means of channeling.
Okay.
Okay,
Many
but
people feel special, feel something better because they're getting a channel from something. And that's when they take their discernment and throw it out the window for a while. And they take whatever information is coming in. That's an experience anyways. But at the same time, what happens is that if you're not using your own discernment, the information may not be applicable. The information may be skewed because what are you channeling? Unless you become really skilled in recognizing what you're channeling and communicate beforehand what its motives are,
Mm-hmm.
you can get anything, and you can get other entities that will be what do they call it? Imposter? Imposter? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Become as an imposter saying, oh, I am such and such, right? And they will relate information. So this is where you have to connect with yourself and see how much it resonates, because you can get any types of information, especially if you create a reliance for something outside of you to come in to direct your life. You now open the floodgates for anything and everything.
That's dependency.
Correct. Correct. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I've had people that created a profession around channeling. And what happens is a dependency relies to it. At first, that may work out. At some point later on, what happens is the entity that they're channeling may not want to participate because of its reliance on it
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff, and start saying, okay, you're depending on me. This is not serving on a grander scale.
Mm-hmm.
So it may refrain from communicating with you, but you're still, oh, look, I created a following and I have to channel and I have to do this because this is what
Mm-hmm.
people are expecting. And now you're forcing the channeling to come through, and now you're opening the gate for another entity to come in
Mm-hmm.
to say, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to communicate. And then you will get bits and pieces of
Mm-hmm.
what is more in alignment, but the rest of it may not, or a lot of it may not. And that's where the discernment has to come in. But the first part of it is like what you said, you don't want to have dependency on that, reliance or dependency on anything outside of you, or see yourself that you're less than what comes through you outside of you. Okay, because then you're really opening up. And now the lesson in behind of that is to realize that if you open yourself in dependency, this is where you're going to get caught in to that little trap, if you want to call it that, is that part of that experience. So my point is how you go in with the communication. You wanting to know. You want to know from a higher perspective of yourself, but the highest perspective that you are ready to receive at this time. You make that very clear. And now when you hear what's coming in, you always run it by your higher self, your soul. Okay, you run it by that. Don't analyze it and make it logical, because that part will come in too. But you go in, how does it feel? How does this information feel? And if it doesn't resonate, then go on and ask more questions. Direct that communication, whatever's coming through you, so that it does start to resonate. There's a whole other level of resonation that we would have to talk about, but I don't know if we have time for that, so we won't go there. Maybe in another conversation at another time.
Okay.
But so that's how you do it. And it really depends on how you're coming in. You're coming in with fear. You're looking for a solution outside of yourself. That's okay. You could ask for a solution outside of yourself, because I do that too. But the way I approach it is very different. I'm not looking for the answer. I look for, can you give me another? I'm asking for a different perspective of one that I cannot see while my mind is engaged, or one that I cannot see from my somewhat limited perspective from my human experience at the moment with my, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then take the perspective that is shared and see how it aligns, and then work with that. So take it as a tool, take it as constructive material rather than the answer.
Okay. I learned
Mm-hmm.
that problems are not solved. Problems are replaced.
Yes.
Okay. Um, on a technical level and on a personal level. And I also many times request assistance from higher planes. And I learned after a while that I don't, the way I request is I request assistance in solving the issue or the problem, not really assisting me to solve it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Many times I'm in a imaginary responsibility. I have to solve this. I have to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sometimes the problem or the issue, the challenge we are facing, it's not really related to me. And it can go away without me. Okay, if it's a client, things can happen without me, so forth, with the family and so forth. So I learned to request assistance on solving the issue or the challenge, and not requesting that I will solve it.
Mm-hmm.
It's relinquished responsibility.
Right. Yes. Good. Excellent.
But back to the thing about discernment, I learned that I learned how to identify, let's say, lower plane polarized knowledge, which is divisive, which is controlling, which is fear-based. And when I say divisive, means that trying to distinguish myself or the group as special, even if in looking at the group, let's say the Jews are the chosen one,
mm-hmm.
or my team are, let's say, the talented team or the leading team of the company and so forth. Whenever there's kind of distinguishment, is that correct to say?
Yep.
Distinguishment, okay? It's not coming from the positive side, it's coming from the negative side of separation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And people fall into it once and again because they are flattered.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
You
Yes.
are special, you are this, you are that, you have capabilities, you have skill, and so forth. But this is again divisive, divide and conquer.
Correct. Yes.
Okay? And another trick is coming from that I learned how to identify, let's say, the negative part is bringing external authority.
Mm.
Okay?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
This is an expert from out of the country. He must be more knowledgeable than our own local experts. Okay? This is kind of the technical point. Okay?
Yep.
This is an alien from a different galaxy, or he must be much more knowledgeable and much more, let's say, spiritual than we are. Okay? This is another known trick.
Yep. Yep.
Okay? So it takes knowledge and self-reflection. What is the source? Okay, and what is, I would say, the agenda that it's coming with.
Correct.
Okay. And I also noticed that, let's say, some professional channelers, I would say, the personality of the entities has changed, evolved.
Yes.
During the years, and I will not name the channels and the entities. So I wouldn't say that I have full discernment of, I can identify, well, this is the ego, this is the a previous lifetime or entity, or this is my higher self. But many times I can feel the essence, and the answer to my question, the first sense is the most correct.
Right. Correct.
And sometimes I can feel that the first sense is fear-based, and I accept it. Well, this is the ego, this is the mind, this is the body, and it's acceptable. And there's no, because I'm the fear-based, there's no place ready for a higher place, higher knowledge to come in. And only when I'm ready to release the fear or release it, a higher level of knowledge will come, and I'm ready to accept.
Mm-hmm.
But that's for myself. Other people have developed their own mechanisms to discern it.
Correct.
But I believe that this is a very important, let's say, skill required in order to evolve spiritually. Is discernment.
Yep, absolutely. One other thing I can throw in there: your higher self will never tell you what to do. Will guide you, but it'll never tell you what to do. Don't do this. Do this. Or it'll never get that. Just
okay, but and it's also very playful.
Yes.
My higher self is playful. Say, okay,
yes,
let's try this. Let's try this. Okay, we didn't try this one. You know,
mm-hmm.
you put on the shelf. Maybe you want to try that, and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And another trick, it's a good trick, is to request for specific signs.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean sign, let's say, okay, if this is the correct, show me, let's say, a white feather. Show me, I give me a sign for, let's say, a special shape of a leaf, or some kind of combination of numbers, or a phrase, and so forth. Be specific with asking your higher self for a sign, and if it is correct, you will receive it. And sometimes I request for a sign, and it took about few months for the sign to arrive.
So do you see that as something beneficial, or you see that as a trick?
I see that as a trick to get a communication with my higher self.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so people who don't have the discernment of identifying what is and they want to ask, let's say, a true false the question, they can ask for a sign.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If this and this and this, please give me a sign that ta 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 ta.
Right.
So it is a trick when you are more, let's say, connected. You have a kind of a language dog.
Mm-hmm. So you find that beneficial or distracting?
Yes, I find it beneficial, but it can be also addictive.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then you get reliance, and now you're going to.
When I was young, about my teenage time, before I got conscripted to the army, I was extremely proficient with cards divinity. I was able, if something was lost, I was able to use the cards reading to find it, and to identify what people think of me and what they want and so forth. And there was come a point I thought I must stop. It's taking over me, and I stopped. And I realized, well, at some point it's taking over and I was young, I was 17 or 18. It is taking over my sovereignty.
Yeah.
I'm not taking a decision anymore.
That's right. That's right.
Right? So I stopped and I said, I'm not doing it anymore. Because I learned the power, I recognize how powerful it is, I experienced it, and I learned that I don't need it.
Perfect.
But sometimes I do, when I get, let's say, distressed, I request other people to assist me with divinity and things like that.
Yeah, because sometimes we get so caught up in our mind and our emotions and so forth that it becomes a little bit skewed. So in essence, somebody that's not involved with the situation or something like that will give you something that is a little clearer, only because it's your aspect of yourself talking to them to show you what you need to look at or see or information that you require. Because at that point you're so engaged in the mind that it won't be as clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that would be rare occasions. But again, you can create low reliance and dependency in having somebody be your card reader all the time or something.
Yeah. So
I've seen it with people too. Say, well, I can't make a decision. I have to go see my astrologist, or I got to go see my card reader. I have to talk to somebody else first before they can make a decision,
mm-hmm.
and that's total disempowerment there.
Mm-hmm. So another I call it trick because it's a tool. It's a tool that can assist you and should not be relied on for a long run. Looking at a sequence of numbers.
Yes.
Okay. And people who learn numerology also can use those kind of sequence. Could be pairs of sequence or same digit many times.
Mm-hmm.
In phone numbers, in license plates, in street advertisement, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is another kind of trick of communicating with your higher self or with the cosmos.
You're right, yes.
Okay. But it's not a relief from the required discernment. Sometimes I get a sign and I say, well, this is not a sign. I request a replication. And if you get a replication 3 times, that's definitely a sign.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a concrete sign.
Right.
And if it's the same day, okay, it's very concrete. It kind of, it's like almost a threat.
Right.
You have to accept it.
Yeah.
But in order to recognize and be responsive, you have to be very, I would say, discerning and perceptive to the signs.
Mm-hmm.
I know a story of native Indian shaman who used to do divinity. He asked his clients, go on a specific trail for a few minutes and tell me all the life creatures that you met during the
walk,
during the hike, and what they did. Birds, insects, animals, whatever you meet, tell me how you say it and what they did. And I sometimes, when I see rare animals in my path, I greet them as a sign bringers, kind of entities who bring signs.
Oh, right. Okay.
So this is I honor them for bringing something or some clue or something like that.
Yeah.
In one of my nightly walks, I saw 2 boars, kind of wild pigs, boars.
Right. Yeah.
Porcupine, a badger, and a fox. One trip, 1 hour. So that's most definitely a sign.
So did you see what the message was for you?
No,
No.
no. But I know it was a sign. Or maybe they were fleeing. It was coming from a hill. So maybe they were all fleeing from that hill.
All right.
So what's your point on or about divinity and science? Your aspect.
Yeah. So the thing is, when we are learning from self-trust, then we may want to ask for signs from our higher self to kind of appease the mind, and also to have something a little bit more confirming and concrete.
Mm-hmm.
That works to a certain degree, because a lot of times our minds will discount it, like you said. Okay, no, I have to see it in 3 signs, and it has to be in this way or that way or whatever it is, because the ego mind will like to do that. So it's a good starting point. But again, like you said, it's not there to put it on reliance, because then it starts to interfere. What I found is that you can start. It's like learning how to walk. You can start doing that at first until
Mm-hmm.
you get a little bit more comfortable. But then, you connect with yourself and get the input from yourself uh, to navigate. But the thing is, even with the signs and whatever else, we are ultimately the one that makes the decision. And then you may want to see if there was something that you are not seeing, like you were pointing out earlier, that needs to come into the equation, okay, for that decision. Like, for example, you're not going to go to your higher self and say, should I go on a trip or not? You know, uh, because the higher self, unless it has something very specific to say to you, it says, yeah, it's a good idea to go on the trip. But in essence, I'm feeling like I need a trip. And I'm feeling that maybe with this trip, I'll have some downtime so that I can actually reflect on some things that I'm having a challenge with. Would this be conducive at this time, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you may get yes, no, whatever, comes into your mind.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it will come to say, well, do you really need that to get, to go away somewhere to clear your mind? Or do you need to start looking at some of the things that you're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with? And you can do that anywhere. You'll have whatever guidance you want. The thing is, you don't want to get into that state where you're wanting your higher self to be telling you what to do, because you're never going to learn, because this experience is not just what the soul wants per se, because part of what the soul wants is for your own self, to align mind, body, and soul to work together with the entity and everything else. And how well are you going to do that when you're just focusing on only your higher self and saying, well, give me the answers? Because you're not learning how to condition your mind to align and to get the information and use its own creativity, rather than just give me the answer, give me the answer, give me the answer type of thing. And like, I don't know if I should go out on a date with this person. Is it the right thing to do? You don't want to go into that, because then you're in dependency. Now you're into reliance. You're now into disempowerment, because you're not bringing any other parts. Because the thing is, your higher self is going to say, well, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, but I had some occasion in my life
Mm-hmm.
that I was prevented to going to places.
Yes, 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 and that's the thing, is because it's not an experience that you need. Maybe the mind is turning around and saying, well, it'd be great to go and do this, but it could be a distraction. It could be something that'll throw you off the path. So in that point in time, your higher self is going to say, well, it's not a conducive right now to go and do that, because it'll be a distraction or this or that, or just not to go there, period. And because it's not part of your experience, because whatever's being taking place there is for whoever's going to participate, and you're not really in alignment with that participation. And that's a good point, because that has come with myself too, where everybody's saying, oh, we're all going over here, we're going to have so much fun, whatever it is. part of me might say, yeah, I haven't had much, fun on the physical plane for a while. But
Mm-hmm.
then your higher self says, no, that's not for you, and that's okay, because it's not part of an experience that you need to have, because there's already an agreement of something that's going to take place there that is not really something that you need to
Mm-hmm.
participate in, and that's it. So you follow that guidance, but it's not going to tell you every step of the way what to do and not to do, because that's not what it's there to do.
Okay, so let following this thought. So where is what is the essence of guides? Okay, if it's not going to tell you what to do. If
Well,
I call assistant for my guides, okay,
mhm.
what is the assistant if I'm not telling, guiding me or showing me the lesson or the path?
Yes, the guides are there to show you the a potential path. It's showing you what to learn from it, what to observe, but it's not going to say, well, if you do this, this is right, and if you do that, that's something wrong, because then that will happen on a few occasions, but in essence, that's the same thing. So when you're asking for a guide's assistance, you say, okay, right now I'd like some assistance in seeing a different perspective, or can you show me a potential outcome if I go down this path? You can ask for, is there, what am I missing? I'm not noticing because I'm so caught up in my mind, or something of that nature. And they're very good for that part of it. But even the guides, I mean, the guides are not there to interfere, because even the angelic realm, the guides, they're they used to be more participant before, where they kind of led you more, but now they don't. They're not. They've been instructed for some time now, on a collective scale, not to
Mhm.
instruct, giving you direct answers to what you should do or shouldn't do. It will give you some awareness of, if you do this, these are some of the potentialities. If you do that, these are some of the potentialities. Right now, really, what do you want to do? What part of an experience do you want? And then you still ultimately make the decision. But like the example that you said about, not to go into this building, for example, or not to go someplace, then if that's important to tell you that right away, without you noticing, going through the exercise of figuring it out yourself, with just giving you some information, then it will give you some direct. That's not all the time. That's occasionally. Um, Other times it'll say, "Jump, go do it," right? And and when you do it, then of course you're going to have certain experiences that you may learn or expand, or be more in alignment for you. Um, One of the things that people were creating was a dependency and reliance. Now, there's more to that, because if it doesn't really matter, if the priority at this point in time is not for you to advance in this lifetime, but just to play a
Mhm.
specific role, then you'll find that you'll get more assistance in that regards, because it's not so concerned about this empowerment part of it.
Yeah.
However, if you're on the fast track where you want to become empowered and become a powerful tool for the human experience and its transformation, then using every aspect of you, your body, your mind, and an entity communication with your higher self is
Mhm.
necessary. Then anything they guide you is like, okay, remember what your soul has been telling you, or remember this other perspective, or whatever it is. It may help you see that, but you're ultimately going to decide what you're going to do.
What about communication with non-terrestrials, or let's say interterrestrials?
Same
And
same thing. It's very very similar. They're unless you're bringing in a situation where you're in what can I call it? Not survival, but there's another word I'm thinking. But if you're going in and wanting them to give you the answer on how to do things and so forth, then unless you're going to learn from that experience and they're going to push you to that, that's fine. But in essence, there's two things about extraterrestrials, and also with angelic realms, and also with guides. They're not living your life. Okay.
They're not responsible.
Yeah, I bring it back to a sporting game. I'm not a sports person, but I can see how that works. When you are playing, say, soccer or football or whatever, you are present of where you are. That means you're playing the game. You're running up the field, you're kicking the ball, or you're doing whatever you're doing. Okay? You're aware of your skills. You're aware of the field that you are. You're aware of how you feel, how much more energy your body has, and so forth. But then you may want a broader perspective. And you may not be able to see who's getting ready to come into your path. So your guides, your angelic realm, your ETs, whatever you want to call it, that you tap into are the ones in the stand. They're the ones that are the audience in a way. Okay? Now they have a little radio connected to you, and they say, okay, listen, there are certain things coming. They're not going to tell you, kick the ball now or do whatever you have to do. They're going to say, listen, you have some coming your way. Use your skills to navigate around that. Just be, and they'll give you a perspective of seeing a bigger field, seeing the whole field rather than just seeing your spot on the field, type of thing. But at the same time, they're not going to know how much energy you have left, if you can actually run that far, or that if you're ready to be tackled or be able to have an opponent come your direction a certain way, that you will know. So it would say, this is what's coming to you, and this is what to prepare yourself for. You decide what action you're going to take because you know how, because you're on the field and you're in the body. That's just an analogy to give you that, and even in your navigational experience.
Okay, how are we with time?
We're about 13 minutes over.
Okay. Do you think it's a good time to conclude now?
Yes, I think so. I mean, we can go on for a long time, Dudi.
Yes, me too. I'm so kind of vibrant, and I enjoy it a lot. Yes. Maybe you can see it in my energy.
Yes, no, and I'm enjoying your enjoyment, and I'm enjoying the fact of having this type of communication with you. And you hold a good energy and space to all of it. So,
thank you.
I'm sure the people that are going to listen to this will view it, will highly benefit from it.
Okay, thank you. I'm flattered, and so let's conclude the recording now. I'm very grateful for this talk. I'm looking forward to the next discussion interview. My mind is running high now with all different questions, and I will have to digest. My mind will have to digest this discussion, and let's spare some more discussion to the next interview. Till next time, thank you, and talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you for having me on and for asking the amazing questions and also everything that you shared. So this was a dance that we did together. So thank you.